The Wendigo Encounter. Our first story takes us deep into the heart of the Black Hills National Forest in South Dakota. Two friends, Mike and David, had been planning their camping trip for months. Mike, a city dweller who worked long hours in a corporate job, longed for a break from the monotony of his daily routine. David, an avid outdoorsman, was eager to share his love for nature with his friend. They had chosen the Black Hills National Forest for its reputed beauty and seclusion, perfect for a weekend getaway from the hustle and bustle of city life. As they set up camp in a secluded spot, the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the forest floor. They built a campfire, its warm glow contrasting with the encroaching darkness. The first night was uneventful, filled with laughter around the campfire and the soothing sounds of the forest. They reminisced about their college days, sharing stories and enjoying the tranquility of the wilderness. Remember that time we tried to camp in your backyard and it started pouring? Mike laughed. How could I forget? David replied. We ended up soaking wet and sleeping on the kitchen floor. This is way better. As the fire crackled and popped, they listened to the distant calls of owls and the rustling of leaves. The sense of peace was palpable, and they felt a deep connection to the natural world around them. On the second night, the atmosphere began to shift. As they sat by the fire, they heard an eerie howl in the distance. It was unlike anything they had ever heard before, a chilling, almost supernatural sound that echoed through the trees. Mike's face paled as he glanced at David. Did you hear that? Mike asked, his voice tinged with unease. Probably just a coyote, David replied, but he didn't sound entirely convinced. The howling grew closer and more persistent. Suddenly, they heard something moving in the brush behind their tent. The rustling sound was unnerving, breaking the peaceful silence of the night. Mike grabbed his flashlight and shone it into the darkness. The beam of light cut through the thick foliage, revealing a tall, emaciated figure standing at the edge of the campsite. Its eyes glowed a sinister yellow, and its long, bony fingers clawed at the air. The creature let out a chilling screech and lunged towards them. The sight of the creature was horrifying. Its skeletal frame, gaunt and twisted, looked like something out of a nightmare. Mike's hand shook as he held the flashlight, the beam wavering in the darkness. "Run!" David shouted, grabbing Mike's arm and pulling him towards the car. They scrambled to their car, their hearts pounding in their chests. The creature was fast, almost gliding over the ground as it chased them. They barely made it inside before the creature reached them. The sound of its claws scraping against the car door echoed in the silent night. "Go, go, go!" Mike yelled, fumbling with the keys. David started the car, the engine roaring to life. They sped off, the tires kicking up dirt and leaves as they left their campsite behind. The drive back was a blur of fear and adrenaline, the creature's screeching echoing in their ears. The next morning, they returned with a park ranger, hesitant and wary. The forest seemed different in the daylight, less menacing but still holding an air of mystery. They found deep claw marks on the trees and their shredded tent, evidence of the previous night's terror. The ranger, skeptical but professional, took note of the damage and the tracks leading away from the campsite. "You boys sure you weren't imagining things?" the ranger asked, raising an eyebrow. "We know what we saw," Mike insisted. It was real. To this day, Mike and David believe they encountered a Wendigo, a legendary creature known to roam the forests, hunting for human flesh. They often wonder what might have happened if they hadn't escaped in time. The experience left them with a lingering fear, a reminder of the darkness that can lurk in the most unexpected places. The Vanishing Campers, our second tale, comes from the dense forests of Oregon. A group of 4 friends, Sarah, Emma, Jake, and Tom, decided to go camping in a remote part of the woods. Sarah, an amateur photographer, was excited to capture the beauty of the untouched wilderness. Emma, a history buff, was intrigued by the area's rumored haunted past. Jake and Tom, childhood friends with a shared love for adventure, were looking forward to a weekend of hiking and exploring. They set off early in the morning, the excitement palpable. The drive to the campsite was filled with laughter and anticipation. As they journeyed deeper into the forest, the paved roads gave way to dirt trails. A sense of isolation grew. They finally arrived at a serene lake, far from any other campers. The water was calm, reflecting the clear blue sky above. They set up camp, their tents pitched in a semicircle around a fire pit. The first night was perfect. They built a roaring campfire, its flames dancing in the night. The stars above were bright and numerous, untainted by city lights. They shared stories, roasted marshmallows, and enjoyed the ambiance of the forest. "This place is amazing," Sarah said, adjusting her camera to capture the night sky. "I can't wait to explore more tomorrow." "It's like we're the only people in the world," Emma added, a hint of awe in her voice. As the fire burned low, they listened to the gentle lapping of the lake's water and the distant calls of nocturnal animals. The sense of peace and tranquility was overwhelming, and they all felt a deep connection to the natural world around them. On the second day, they decided to explore a bit further into the woods. As they ventured deeper, the forest became denser, the trees taller and more imposing. After an hour of hiking, they stumbled upon an old, abandoned cabin. The cabin was dilapidated, with broken windows and an overgrown yard. Curiosity got the better of them, and they decided to take a look inside. The cabin was empty, but it felt strangely unsettling. The walls were covered in strange symbols, and the air was thick with the scent of decay. "This place gives me the creeps," Jake said, shivering despite the warm afternoon sun. "Yeah, let's get out of here," Tom agreed, glancing nervously at the shadows. They left quickly, the sense of unease lingering long after they returned to their campsite. That night, strange things began to happen. Sarah woke up to the sound of whispering outside the tent. The whispers were faint but distinct, like multiple voices speaking in hushed tones. She looked out but saw nothing. The next morning, Emma was missing. Her sleeping bag was empty, and her belongings were untouched. They searched the area frantically, calling out her name, but found no trace of her. "Emma! Emma! Where are you?" Sarah's voice echoed through the trees, panic rising in her chest. "We need to find her," Jake said, his face pale with fear. "She can't just vanish." Panicked, they decided to leave immediately, but their car wouldn't start. The engine sputtered and died, leaving them stranded. As night fell again, the fear in their group was palpable. "Stay together," Tom instructed, his voice firm. "We'll get through this." But as the night wore on, the sense of dread grew. Jake disappeared without a sound, his flashlight lying abandoned on the ground. Tom and Sarah were terrified, huddling in the tent with a knife for protection. The forest, which had seemed so peaceful, now felt alive with malevolent intent. In the dead of night, they heard the whispering again, closer this time. The voices seemed to be coming from all around them, surrounding the tent. Sarah swore she saw Emma and Jake standing at the edge of the campsite, beckoning them. But something was off. Their eyes were vacant, and their movements were unnatural, like marionettes on strings. "That's not them," Tom whispered, his grip on the knife tightening. "We need to run." They ran through the forest, their hearts pounding in their chests. The trees seemed to close in around them, the branches clawing at their clothes. They stumbled upon the cabin again, the sight of it sending a chill down their spines. Inside, they found Emma and Jake, unconscious but alive. Their friends were pale and cold, but they were breathing. They managed to carry them back to the campsite, struggling with the dead weight. Miraculously, the car started this time, and they sped away, leaving the haunted woods behind. The drive back was filled with silence, each of them lost in their thoughts. Back home, they tried to make sense of what had happened. The experience left them shaken and changed, each of them carrying the memories of that terrifying night. They often wonder what would have happened if they hadn't escaped, and the thought haunts them. Their friendship remained strong, but the bond was now forged in fear and shared trauma. The Watcher in the Woods. Our final story is from the remote wilderness of Alaska. A father and his teenage son, John and Alex, went on a camping trip for some bonding time. John, a single father, wanted to strengthen his relationship with his son, who had been distant and withdrawn since his mother's death. They had chosen Alaska for its rugged beauty and the chance to reconnect away from the distractions of modern life. The journey to the campsite was long, but the scenery was breathtaking. Towering mountains, dense forests, and crystal-clear rivers surrounded them. They set up camp near a beautiful river, excited to fish and enjoy nature. "Mom would have loved this place," Alex said quietly, casting his line into the water. "Yeah, she would," John replied, placing a comforting hand on his son's shoulder. The first day was filled with laughter and stories, a rare moment of connection between them. They fished, hiked, and explored the area, marveling at the untouched wilderness. As the sun set, they built a campfire and shared a quiet meal. "This is nice," Alex said, poking at the fire with a stick. "We should do this more often." "We will," John promised, a sense of hope filling his heart. The night was calm, the sounds of the forest creating a soothing background to their conversation. The sense of peace was overwhelming, and they both felt a deep connection to the natural world around them. On their second night, they noticed something strange, a figure standing in the distance, watching them. At first, they thought it was another camper, but the figure never moved. It just stood there watching. As night fell, the figure seemed to get closer. "Dad, do you see that?" Alex asked, his voice tinged with fear. "Yeah, I see it," John replied, his heart racing. "Stay close to me." They tried to ignore it, but a sense of dread filled the air. The feeling of being watched was palpable, making their skin crawl. Alex swore he heard footsteps around the tent, but when John checked, no one was there. The next morning, they found strange symbols carved into the trees around their campsite. The symbols were intricate and unfamiliar, almost like runes. Unease turned to fear as the figure appeared again that evening, closer than ever. "We need to leave," John said, packing their belongings with urgency. "This isn't safe." As they packed up, Alex vanished. One moment he was there, and the next he was gone, his fishing pole lying abandoned by the river. "Alex! Alex!" John shouted, his voice echoing through the trees. John searched frantically, calling his son's name. Hours passed. Just as he was about to lose hope, he found Alex near the river, dazed and confused. "Dad?" Alex said, his voice weak. "What happened?" "I don't know," John replied, hugging his son tightly. "We're leaving now." Alex had no memory of what happened or how he got there. His clothes were dirty and torn, as if he had been wandering through the forest. They left immediately, fear driving them to pack up hastily. The feeling of being watched never left them, even as they drove away. Back home, Alex began having nightmares about the figure. He described it as a tall, shadowy man with hollow eyes. The nightmares were vivid and terrifying, waking him in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat. "Dad, he's here," Alex whispered one night, staring out the window. "What do you mean?" John asked, his heart pounding. "The man from the forest," Alex replied, his eyes wide with fear. "He He's watching us. John did everything he could to help his son, but the nightmares persisted. The experience left a lasting mark on their relationship, drawing them closer, but also leaving them with a shared fear. They rarely spoke of it, but the memories lingered, haunting their dreams and their waking moments. The sense of being watched never truly left them, a constant reminder of the darkness that can lurk even in the most beautiful places.